Hi friends, this is Angela Power Disney, Angie Power Disney. I'm just back from the hospital, x-rays, no surgery needed, thank God, and another 4 weeks in a cast. I'm just making a little hokey video on the subject of, I want to say Tommy Robinson, but actually really on the subject of Sabine McNeill. And Tommy Robinson, I'm not familiar with hugely. And I know, I just watched a Richie Allen analysis of the scenario, and it's made me very angry. First of all, Tommy being arrested for contempt of court for putting the outcome of an expensive taxpayer-funded trial narrative is suspicious to me, because on camera during the arrest, the police actually say you're being arrested for a breach of the peace and incitement. I also listened to George, an assistant of Tommy Robinson, giving an interview to a Canadian interviewer, Canadian journalist, saying that they had been very careful to try and abide by his suspended sentence conditions, in as much as they didn't go until the last day of the jury making their considerations, so as they couldn't be accused of prejudicing the case. Both sides had been heard and so on and so forth. And as far as I understand, Tommy was just reporting. Tommy, who does have 3 other names and does have a colourful history online, but was reporting pretty much what was public knowledge. So I'm not pretending to be an authority, but something I certainly pulled Richie Allen up for. He was taking the high moral ground about how he had to learn law in his bona fide journalism training and so on and so forth. Says in his broadcast, he thinks he's exposing pedos. Well, he's never exposed anything, except for, I'm sure he's exposed himself a few times. If that's the high moral ground, if that's the standard for professional journalism, I'm horrified, Richie. I'm disgusted at your coverage. I'm disgusted that you didn't highlight the fact that it's on record with the police saying to Tommy Robinson, you're being arrested for a breach of the peace for live streaming outside a court, not in, outside a court. If he filmed the defendants, if he filmed any jury members, I don't know. I would recommend you listen to, and I'll try and post the link, the Canadian journalist who interviewed Tommy's right-hand man, a man called George, who makes it very clear the steps they took not to breach the suspended sentence conditions that were imposed at Canterbury. It's not about the individual, it's about the principle. But the point I want to make is, I've just shared on Facebook, and this is another link I'll try and share in my description box, a video by an American called Michael Frim, I think his name is, an ex-QAnoner, and fortunately he's not persistently sharing Q drops, because I think that's been pretty conclusively proven to have been people like Pamphlet Anon and Baruch the Scribe and various anonymous old-timers. Just go and look at Unirock's evidence video on that. But the point I'm making is, Michael Frim shared in his video about Tommy Robinson quite a few clips from Sabine McNeill's speech to the European Parliament going back several years. And I really don't know if he's aware that she is on remand in prison, HMP Bronsfield, considered not safe to abide by her gagging order from a court case against her that collapsed with no case to answer, but at the end of which the judge, who had dismissed the jury on the Friday, on the Monday the judge announces, no case to answer, but by the way, I'm imposing a restraining order on you, a reporting order, restriction on you, and your fellow defendant, Ved Chowdhury, Neelu Berry. You may not discuss the Hampstead cover-up, you may not go within, a restricted zone of the alleged location, you may not have agents discuss it, you may not blah, 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 blah. So, I'm glad that the Tommy Robinson arrest has gone global. I've got little antenna up, why has it hit the mainstream media? Why is it being promoted? Alex Jones was a little bit over the top saying this is it, the English Revolution is kicking off, and so on and so forth. I've also seen a clip by the Vigilant Christian, I think it was, or Call for an Uprising, one of those guys, where Tommy Robinson is wearing a Star of David or something and declaring himself a Zionist who believes in Israel. But the truth is, I feel like he's possibly an asset or a puppet. Now, he publicly spoke about being approached by MI5 whilst he was in prison. They got him on some legal issue, a mortgage where he'd over-declared his income or whatever, but the mortgage repayments were being made, covered by, rental income. But like many people, he especially during the subprime mortgage flooding, psyop really organised by the bankers. But during that time, he took a mortgage out and over-declared his income. So they gave him a jail sentence for that. Richie Allen alludes to domestic violence, and I would never support or endorse that. What I do believe is that people who, have maybe made mistakes in the past, and grave mistakes, domestic violence is not just a little oops, adolescent, mistake. It's major. But I don't even know if that's true, because I know when Richie Allen says stupid things like, oh, he says he's exposing paedophiles, he's just trying to be a celebrity, and he's never exposed anything except for himself, he's probably exposed himself several times. How can you take the high ground? Alright, I'm going to try not to make this ad hominem. So the point I'm making, and I have expressed reservations about Sabina Belinda, about the amount of paedophiles around, the Mackenzie friends, even John Hemming, MP, who is lauded in her European speech, but was accused by Esther Baker, whom I find a very credible witness as a survivor, and I think she and I have a perpetrator in common. So don't take this as the details, but what I want to say is there are many whistleblowers and campaigners, even social workers, Carol Woods, even medical professionals, Neelu Berry, even data analysts, Sabine Curio, Sabine McNeil, Arthur Cowell in Australia, so many, Jake Clark in England. Rupert Quaintance was jailed. An American citizen journalist came to the UK to look into the Hampstead case and ended up being a political prisoner for a year with his passport confiscated and then jailed for 5 months for intimidating the alleged paedophiles. So the Tommy Robinson arrest and jailing is the tip of the iceberg. And also, I'm curious, when it's on record that with the police saying we're arresting you for breach of the peace and incitement for live streaming, and his live streaming was very peaceful, how did that morph into, oh no, 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 this is about endangering the trial? Oh, no. No, he could have cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands. Like, no, he could have, the jury could have been swayed, it could have been declared a mistrial, blah, blah, blah. The British justice system is something to be lauded. No, it's not. No, it's not. When this draining the swamp globally, and I do believe the spotlight's on the UK for a reason and by design, you will be shocked and horrified at how many judges go down to do with paedophilia, corruption, cover-up, trafficking, and so on. So I'm not putting the British justice system on any kind of a pedestal. I'm not putting Tommy Robinson on a pedestal. This goes deep, and the final thought I will leave you with, first of all, Sabine is 74 now. I think she made that speech to the European Parliament years ago. She's 74 and disabled. I've had my run-ins with her and have questions for her to answer, but she is languishing in a British jail on remand as a whistleblower and campaigner for breaching this, what I would say was an illegal restraining order, the equivalent of a D notice. Just like they tried to slap on Tommy Robinson, oh, not only can you not report on the Muslim grooming gang case, you also can't report on the jailing of the campaigner trying to highlight that. It's a duplicate. I'm glad we're reaching the 100th monkey point. Sorry about the phone shaking. I need to get a phone stabilizer. But I'm glad we're reaching the 100th monkey point with Tommy Robinson. But I promise you, whistleblowers, campaigners, activists, parents of stolen children being jailed and being Melanie Shaw, being disappeared, being, what's that, they call it a train where you get moved in prison from prison to prison to prison and nobody can track you down and nobody can check on your well-being. Melanie Shaw, children's home survivor, who named politicians and high-profile people of power and influence and discussed murders in the children's home and trafficking, orchestrated, systemic child trafficking. She's been in prison, I don't know how long. They keep trumping her. She's wounded, don't get me wrong, she's wounded. Many survivors have addiction issues. Many survivors are very easy to groom because they were vulnerable in the first place. That's why they were in children's homes. That's why they needed a trustworthy service to protect them. But instead of protecting them, for the most part, they were trafficked and abused and exploited. Another thing I would say is, yes, the Muslim invasion of Europe, which is orchestrated, and I speak some Arabic, I've worked with Muslims, I've, studied the Quran a little bit, Khalil Gibran a little bit. I love individual people, but the systematic flooding of Europe with people of the Muslim faith, especially those of fighting age, especially those radicalized and extreme, it's an agenda, and it's now happening in Ireland. It's now, Leo Varadkar is a globalist. It's now being put in place in Ireland. I think he's just sanctioned millions more refugees into a country that's so small. I'm living in a house where my new neighbours are due to be a Pakistani family wearing hijabs and so on and so forth. As people, they're probably lovely. But my question is, given that the housing list in the county of Meath, the waiting list is currently about 8 years, why are the foreign nationals jumping the waiting list right to the top? You know, how many Irish families are homeless? And, you know, what is this? What is, like if I went and lived in Spain for, you know, over a year, and I wouldn't have dreamed of looking for housing, benefits, medical care, anything. I knew that I was a guest in Spain and I was delighted to be welcome there. And even in order to obtain citizenship there or any kind of healthcare or anything, I would need to pay 7 years of employment stamps. Now that makes sense to me. All right, I was 59, 50, you know, whatever, 58, 59, going out there, so and in poor health. So the likelihood of me, you know, paying employment stamps for 7 years was slim, which is one of the reasons I'm back home. But that's not the point. The point is, if I choose to go and live in another country, or even if I was evacuated there, that doesn't give me a right to say I want a council house, I want to jump the list over the, you know, locals, I want healthcare, I want social benefits, I want extra benefits, I want everything. No, that's an agenda, that's a political agenda. You know, and the other thing is, you know, despite my affinity with the Ishmael tribes, with the Muslim people, despite my, you know, working 3 years with them in merchant banking, despite my having had a Lebanese boyfriend for quite a while and speaking the language and honouring and respecting the individuals, I would not dream of saying, right, I'm coming to Saudi Arabia, so I want my values imposed on your society. That's my right. You know, I don't agree with a lot that goes on in Saudi Arabia. I especially don't agree with a lot that goes on in Israel. It's apartheid. It's debauched. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. It's horrendous. But if I go and live in another country, I'm the guest. When in Rome do as the Romans do. I don't have to do what's going on in that country, but I completely respect the likes of Spain that say, you're welcome to come here, you're welcome to work here. You cannot, however, claim any state assistance until you have 7 years' contributions on record. Why can't we do that in England and Ireland? You know, if somebody wants to come and contribute, by all means. If somebody's being deliberately sent here to destabilise a culture and to dilute a nationality and to... it's an agenda, that's all I can say for now. So my bottom line is, yes, I don't believe... I'm shocked that Tommy Robinson pled guilty to contempt of court when he was arrested for breach of the peace and incitement. I'm wondering what kind of legal help he's got and whether he needs to up the ante and find some different legal support. Obviously, it's disgusting that you get 13 months for contempt of court. I don't believe he'll serve that, and if you want to go right out on a limb